Hello and welcome to episode 61 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is someone who also made waves this week for wearing a see-through dress, Greendragoon.
Yeah, but I was wearing like a full tuxedo underneath it.
You have very strange taste.
That's what they said.
And we have the first inhabitant of Mega Earth to reveal himself, Markhawkman. Who hasn't heard of...
Romulans don't live on Mega Earth.
For all we know. We'll have to see when we get there. Hippiejohn won't be joining us this week, but in his place we have Sirboulevard and Rellimtime. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Great to be back.
Guys.
Well, we have big news, and news to warm the hearts of millions, or, well, dozens anyway. We have a big asset update. That's right. For the first time since all those piles of Latinum were added, we have new detail objects in the Foundry. These are going live Thursday, as the patch notes were just posted a few minutes ago as we record this here on Wednesday night. So, I have put together a video of the new assets, and has some audio on it, so we'll just take a look at that first. So, Dragoon, when you're ready, roll the tape.
Okay.
First off, we have floors. Several metal and rubber floors for the Federation. Different patterns on them. It's important to note that these have undersides, so they can be used as ceilings. Then we have carpets in all shapes and sizes and colors. A very fine texture on them. See, there are 11. So you can only see 10 right there because the 11th is over here. The 11th is, I set it aside because it's labeled as TOS Red. So, you know, the red carpet from the Enterprise. Next we have Klingon floors. We have several different tiles, like we have the triangle and square, different kind of square tile. One of my favorites over there on the left. Have 5 of those. And last but not least, Romulan floors have a green, gray, and sort of a gunmetal carpet. That's more of a purple. Now, coming over here, we have assets from New ESD. This is Admiral Quinn's desk and chair. We have this desk out of the infirmary. And we have several different shapes and sizes of these desks, which appear all over the station. As you can see, they have different kinds of controls in them. I found one where the text was actually mirrored, so the text was backwards. These 2 chairs are great. One of them is sittable. You can actually have people click and sit on it. Then we have pads that you can put on people's desks, 4 different kinds with 4 different things on the display. These floor lights, and we have matching, almost but not quite identical, ceiling lights. Great for transporters. Now we have these 2 things for the walls. We have emergency med station and damage control locker. We have a new lift. This is sort of sleeker than the cargo lift that we had before. Here's Thomas the Cat's nifty barrels. The same blue barrels that I believe broke Worf's back way back in TNG. And we have several other new kinds of crates in varying sizes. Can always use more crates, right? All right, now we have planters. These things are meant to have plants in them. They do have quite a lot of structure to them below what you normally see, so they can actually be used as columns, and we have square versions and round versions. And some with actual plants in them. All right, this is a little stand for a mannequin, like you see in the tailor shop. We have the standing light, and then a hanging version of that light. Now we have several different sizes of wall console. And take a look at the back of these. We got people so far using these as walls. Obviously that eats up a lot of assets, but it can look very nifty. Now we have the various consoles that appear all over ESD. These are great. These are different style than any of the consoles we've seen so far. They've got that sort of very, very light gray. We have one that's just a stand and one that's just the console, as well as so many different shapes and sizes. And these ones over here that are function like the mail consoles in ESD, and several different configurations of those. Now watch this, very nifty. We have the hollow console, and it works. I know we all like the hollow console. Now moving on. What we got here is water. These are flat water volumes. Not entirely flat, I should say. They do have a three-dimensional quality. They will splash when you go in them. And then see, as we go, they have nice reflections. And as we go under them, they have the water effect when you're under them. For about 33 units, I believe, under each one. And they come in all different shapes, or all different sizes. There are 3 varieties of these waters with 3 different sort of colors and textures on them. This is the ESD one, it's sort of a little more flatter in blue. This is the purple New Romulus water. And the default water, which is darker blue and has a bit more waves to it. So they all have the distortion effect when you're under them.
Okay, and we're back.
Okay. That seemed to work. So as I was putting this together, I mean, I think people were saying there are also some new plants in there. I can't work out exactly which ones they are. I don't know if you guys know.
I do. It's one of them is actually on the variation of the planters. It actually says "with plant" on it. It's just one of the movable plants. You actually see it in the room we're sitting in right now.
Yes, I should mention that Sirboulevard built this map here using some of the new assets. Like I think we're sitting in Admiral Quinn's chairs, right?
We are indeed sitting in Quinn's chairs. The floor is also the new carpeting. The ceiling is one of the new metal tiles. We've got the light assets in here, which are from new ESD. Pretty much if I didn't need to use an old asset, I didn't.
Awesome. These new assets were all added by Tacofangs or Tumor Boy. Honestly, I don't know which he prefers. He's in the chat room right now. Maybe he can tell us which one we should call him by. I wanted to relay a couple of comments that he made on the forums if anyone has missed them. He said the props were easy, or something that he was able to quickly put in without help from anyone else. And he said he did hope to get in the new ESD map, but he needs help from the design team for that.
Yeah, plus, and it's one of those things that, I mean, it's not worth wasting their time putting the map in while we know that they're eventually going to add Club 47. So, I mean, I would hate to see them like spend all that time importing it in and then either us not getting Club 47 or them having to re-import it later.
Okay, he says Tacofangs is his official game type name. Tumor Boy is what he used in Champions Online. So they cross over a lot.
Yeah.
And he also gave us a really interesting comment in the chat room earlier about the light assets. The floor and ceiling lights have character-only lights built in, so they won't light up the environment, but they will light up the characters that are nearby.
That's intriguing. Because, I mean, you do notice a change in your character when you go by, but it doesn't project onto any of the other geometry.
And I think that's, and Tumor Boy, and tell me if I'm right or not, I'm pretty sure that's to keep down on memory issues, so that the lights are done entirely elsewhere, and those lights will just affect us, because we won't see the difference.
Certainly could be. So he also mentioned the Holo console and the sittable chair, which since they both work, he said he's going to be trying to do more of that going forwards. Which is great. I mean, we love to have that because there was one time I had to sort of force people to do a sit animation in the chair, and of course you have to be standing on top of the chair to do it. Not everybody was going to know to do that. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Are you going to be redoing a lot of your missions to utilize these new assets?
I'm going back over Honor of the Empire and replacing the floor and ceiling in that cafe I made. And I think that's the only thing I'm doing. Besides that, I've actually just held off on some of my projects to include these new assets.
Well, I'm probably going to definitely go back and take advantage of the new floors, both in Part 1 and Part 2.
Ooh, here's a good demonstration of why using the sit animation to sit in the chair doesn't always work right. I just did it, and as you can see, my character is floating above the chair because the height of the sit animation is actually being calculated based off the arms of the chair, which for some unknown reason, I wasn't able to get my character to stand between the arms. The game would only let me stand on the arms.
Yeah, it's a narrow gap between the two arms. You can do it if you work.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. But what I think for that particular thing, I think I'll probably redo the objectives a little bit. What I had was the objectives was you to sit in the chair, and it would do the sit animation for you. I think what I'll do is replace it with the sittable chair and redo the objective so it's, I don't know, maybe like a reach marker or something, and then an NPC tells you to sit down. Something like that.
Which actually brings up an interesting question. Has anyone tested if the interacts that we have in the Foundry work with the automatic sit animation?
So, like saying if you're already seated, will you be able to interact with something?
No, actually what I mean is if you set an asset to be sit down in this chair, are you actually going to use the automatic sit down that's already attached to it, or is it going to do what it's always done and just sit you right where you are?
That's a good question.
Well,
we'll have to do some testing.
Yeah. As far as I tell, I mean, you have to double click on an object to sit in it, so it doesn't seem like it would be a normal interact.
Yeah, I don't think it would work with if you put an interact with objective on it.
Well, the clickable chairs that they stuck in the Foundry, those work the same as, like park benches and ESD, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what you would probably have to do is do it separately, where the objective is something other than interact with that chair. And you just have to tell the player to sit.
You could do something like hiding a small object inside the chair.
What you might try is a very small reach marker that only takes up the center of the chair.
That's what I was thinking.
There you go. That's a good idea. It's going to take some experimentation, I think. But I'll tell you, I mean, I'm going to definitely go back and just do all kinds of stuff to my existing missions because I have so many interiors that are kind of like the one that we're sitting in now, sort of, built sky castles with the walls and everything, and we were using sort of the floors that looked kind of like stone, and now we have so many different other options. So I mean, that's going to be a large part of my weekend, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I've
And we
definitely.
have
Yeah,
another.
it made me glad that I haven't finished rebuilding Betarana Station yet, because with these new assets, I'll probably, copy most of the old map over, but, I have reasons to rebuild parts of the map now.
Yeah, the question is going to be whether you do a few little tweaks, no tweaks at all, or completely rebuild the map.
Indeed, and Taco's just given us another insight into how the game works regarding the lights. Apparently there are light limitations, but characters can handle more lights in the environments, so they add an extra character lights on some of these assets.
Well, I think what he means by that is that each object in the environment uses processor time for lighting and shadows. Thus, the amount of processor time for a light is a function of the number of objects that the light is lighting up. So having a light shining on 12 crates, if the light actually lights up the 12 crates, that's 12 times as much processor time as having it just light up your character.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, the character is the only thing that's moving, so you only want to deal with dynamic lights on the moving thing versus everything that's sitting static. I don't know, Tumor Boy, maybe you can answer this. Do you guys use any sort of light baking?
You might explain that for those of us who are not.
I don't know if they do it as much now, but back in ye olden days, they would light a scene like in the editor and then bake all the lightings, and then it would just be applied as an extra texture on top of the normal texture. So you could get really good looking lighting, but nothing could move because all of the
Because it was textures and not actual lighting, you might say.
yeah.
Ah, ye good old days.
I'm sure they still
If
do a
you
lot of
want
it.
to call it that.
I mean, produce good effects.
All right. So what do you guys think is the best of the new assets? What do you like the most?
Pads.
Everything.
There's a lot of good stuff. I'd have to tie between the floors and the water because I mean those two alone are some of the most useful assets we've had added in.
Did you guys check out the pictures I made of the map I did on Tribble where I flooded Vulcan?
Yes, actually, in fact,
I've seen actually Tumor Boy here. He's saying no baking. The light cost isn't so much per object, but rather a cost of the number of lights hitting any given object. So each object can only be affected by 2 lights, roughly.
yeah, and actually,
So they limit the number of lights that can interact with any object.
now that I think about it, that's actually a setting. There's a setting to the max number of lights you're allowed to place
Interesting.
or have affecting any one object. So it can actually be turned up in the user settings.
The more you know.
Because I remember back when What Lies Beneath came out, in order to really get the good the lighting effects with the spotlight, you had to turn your max lights all the way up to 5.
Yeah, well, even now, if you have your settings set low, the flashlight's pointless.
Yeah, because it's just a texture.
Even for dark missions, I don't bother with the lights simply because, I mean, I can see whatever my character's facing somewhat better than the other stuff, but
SFC 100 is asking if these chairs will look good on a bridge, and I think absolutely they would. Sirboulevard, you're saying they're like on the Prometheus bridge?
It's a reskin of the ones that were used on the Prometheus bridge because it's the exact same model, but it's new colors for ESD.
I was definitely thinking they would be. And I've got a bridge that I built as like a battle bridge, and I think I was probably going to replace that because currently it's using the Klingon captain chair. because it's the only one we had.
And we also have the other chair style from ESD that is a
Yes.
more lower profile, and that it is more in common with the Prometheus bridge chairs. But yeah, I can see these as a decent
Definitely.
captain's chair.
Oh yeah,
It's good enough for Quinn. It's
If-
good enough for captains.
I was about to say that. So let's see here. We've had some people playing around with these assets over the past week. I mean, we got them on Tribble on Friday. People were playing around over the weekend, created some really awesome stuff. So, Dragoon, why don't we do that right now?
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, bring up
It's
number
up.
1. All right, number 1. And we don't have listed who created these, so I'm just
Well, this is one of Kirk Fat's.
yeah. Some of it was Kirk Vats, and I can't remember who else was posting in that. It might have been you, Sirboulevard, was posting in that thread. But this is sort of the beginnings of a wall using the base of the consoles, or the back of some of the ESD consoles. Okay, let's go to number 2. Ah, here's flooded Vulcan. People were flooding like every single map. It's great.
I have to post my flooded Enterprise stuff. Don't let the Betazoids drive.
Yeah. I mean, Ally Mac and I, we were talking about the mains about our moon and that whole trick he did with the lowering the set, or in order to get the water to rise.
Oh yeah, and you don't have to do that anymore. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about adding because I don't think I'm going to completely redesign my flooded space station that I've been building, because I want to have that exterior part where it's on land and like crashed, and then you go inside and part of it's flooded. But I think what I might do is add a sequence where, like, the villain tries to flood it even more in an attempt to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it definitely opens up a world of possibilities.
There is one thing I realized when I was doing the testing, is that there is one base map that you can use as the foundation for the map you're making that has a water texture that you cannot add into a map at this time.
What
And
is
that's
that?
the Grethor map, because it has that pink gooey Klingon blood instead of water.
And there was at
So-
least one person who kind of combined one of the new water planes with the Grethor water and created this eerily dark blue.
That's
water
right. I did
effect.
see that.
Well, I'm going to have to check
yeah.
that out.
Johnny Snowball is one of the other people who did a lot of this mishmashing. So let's go on to number 3. We've got some stairs here using the desks, like Admiral Quinn's desk, and the crates. Pretty cool looking stairs.
Yeah. You get more use out of crates.
Let's go to number
right.
4.
Got some silos.
Yeah, like silos or pillars, big thick ones, using the planters stacked on top of each other, like I talked about in the video, because it's got all that geometry below what you see.
Yeah, I'm guessing that it was designed that way so they could vary the height.
Certainly. Okay, on to number 5. We have a corridor here. I believe Kirk Fat told me he used the backs of the ESD wall consoles. All whole bunch of them put together, so it actually is pretty high on the asset count. I think he said something like 117 assets for this piece of corridor or something like that. But it looks very good, obviously, especially with the carpet.
Nice.
I'll tell you though, one thing I'm going to do on some of my maps is make like a border for the carpet where it touches the walls, because sometimes it doesn't look quite natural where it goes right up to the wall. Like you need some skirting or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good, especially if you're not like building a massive map, to kind of add in some subtle details.
Yes. Yeah,
That
if you're not already running up against the asset limit.
I think it works better in my experience with these smaller rooms like the one we're sitting in. I tried to do it in a corridor that I didn't publish, and if you've got branching off, it kind of looks all funky. So just be very careful if you're going to do that.
Yeah, certainly. All right,
so-
number 7. More stairs. This time using the some of the other types of desks. I like that one in the background that's sort of like angled stairs.
Yeah, I bet you that would go really
Very cool.
nice with some of the science walls.
Mm-hmm. Anything would do would have more interesting stairs. All right, let's go to the next one. Number 8. So this kind of shows a little bit more of the floors and their three-dimensional quality because they do have some depth to them. So you could actually kind of use them as like walls or foundation pieces, things like that. These are the Klingon ones especially.
Yeah, I'm using some of those pieces on this map for stairs.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to anything to kind of break up flat surfaces.
Mm-hmm. I love the patterns on these Klingon ones. I'm going to definitely use those.
Yeah, I'm sure at
I
least one of
can't.
these.
What were you going to say?
I was going to
Go
say
again.
I'm gonna definitely use one of these for my big map in part 2.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I can't unsee one of those Klingon ones. Just looks like it's made out of Triforces, and it's driving me insane.
Do, 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 do.
Well, I think that I've seen that material used in some of the Klingon interiors, though, as like the deck plating or something.
I think that one specifically comes from the Bortas Bridge, doesn't it?
I think you're right. I think it does come from the Bortas.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that there. If you look at the screenshot on the lower right, you can see that he's actually sunk the hanging light into the wall a little bit, and it kind of makes this cool sort of wall sconce thing. All right, moving on. Number 9.
Actually, isn't there one of those this room we're sitting in?
I don't know. Yeah, look above.
Yes.
Look at the chandelier. So let's see, number 9. He shows exactly how tall the sides of the that might be like the 40 by 40 or 100 by 100 floors.
I think he was actually experimenting with mixing and matching floor sets to kind of break up the texture.
You might be right about that. Now that I look at it a little further, that's interesting. Right, number 10. We see the sides of some of the carpets.
Yeah, again, kind of that breaking things up with different shapes.
All right, next one. Now I'm not entirely sure what this asset he was using here is to make this sort of weird-looking corridor thing. Does any of you guys recognize this?
No, I'm not entirely sure. It might be wall. I don't know. I'd have to go look. Clearly something.
It's clearly something. I don't recognize it. Whatever it was a bunch of them like stacked together to make a little walkway or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, number 12. More cool stairs.
And again, another one of those examples of using a second set of blocks to kind of break up the texture.
It's got a red carpet.
And I believe the circle there is actually one of the planters sunk under the floor.
Yeah, sunk under the floor to make sort of a floor decal. Number 13. This is like a transporter room. Or a transporter platform at any rate. I think there's a certain randomness to those, the mannequin platforms, which is what you see on the floor of the transporter pad there.
No, he's sinking lights into them. Those are floor lights.
I think that if this is the picture, I think it is. He used 3 different objects simply so that he could demonstrate that there were different ways you could do it.
Oh yeah, you guys are absolutely right. He sunk some of the little floor lights that we have, the really little ones, into those. That's great.
I was actually playing around
I
taking
didn't realize that.
taking one of the extra large lights and sinking that into the top of the display pad here, and it fits perfectly. And it almost kind of reminds you of a kind of a TOS-esque transporter pad. And then you've got the ceiling lights to go match it.
What this one looked like really good to me is like a little one in a like a little cargo transporter in a like a shuttle bay or a cargo bay, something like that.
I just realized there's something we can do with that. If these assets look convincing as a transporter pad, and we've already got a current era transporter room asset, we can now do map transitions on the same map from a transporter to a transporter.
There you go. You disappear that asset, the big room, and then you reappear underneath the player, this particular looking transporter pad, something like that. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if anyone's tried this, but if you try and spawn that transporter room asset around the player, it's going to push the player out, just like the holo.
Yeah, it forces them to respawn sometimes.
Yeah. You can disappear it from around you, but you can't have it appear around you.
Yeah, it's because
it's like the hollow grid asset.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
The game just doesn't like putting things around the player. It doesn't seem to understand that the player is supposed to be inside the object. It just
well, I mean,
it's like it treats it as a solid object essentially.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, to the engine, it's a solid object because it's a single detail object, and it's just probably some engine tech somewhere that's designed to keep players from getting stuck.
Let's move on to number 14. You can make jail bars now using the hanging light asset. It's the cable that it hangs down on.
Yeah, some of the light objects have really long things they dangle from, and if you stick the light all the way below the floor, all you see is this metal bar.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. We need some good old-fashioned jail bars, right? All right, the next one's really great, Sid. It's the sort of a mock-up of a TOS-style shuttle. Using some of the old TOS assets we got, plus the carpets and some of the new assets for walls, I believe. And the crate sunk into the floor for the hatch. Pretty excellent.
The simplicity of TOS minimalism.
All right, number 16. This is really cool looking.
This
like is a Jeffries tube.
I think this was Kirkfat working on the...
Mm-hmm. You can see the floor is the tops of one of the crates. The walls are the... what do you call them? The base of the consoles. Now, I don't think this is actually big enough for you to crawl through if the ceiling is at the top of those.
This is at like shoulder or like waist height.
Yeah, he's got it up a little bit off the floor of where the Ferengi is standing here.
I think it shows.
But
this can still...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it doesn't mean it's not useless. Again, like that transporter room thing. You can just use it as like, crawl through the Jeffries tube, spawn in a new room.
Yeah, it's decoration almost. A place where you can't go, but is there to look cool and to, say, and you're entering the Jeffries tube, and then the objective actually puts you on a new map.
And if you go to the next image, you can see how he ends up using it.
Yeah. We go to image 17. He put a wall and a grate in front of it, so you can sort of see it going back in the distance, and back in the back there's the TOS warp core.
Karkfak's one of those people who's really good at background details.
Mm-hmm. And there's just so much new options for it with these. It's fantastic. So you guys excited to have this all tomorrow?
Yes.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, a whole lot of excitement.
So much excitement, Taco. I wish I could give you a cake.
Well, if bribery at all works towards getting any more assets, we are not above that.
Let's send him a song instead. With some cookies.
Tumor Boy will need to tell some of his friends on the character art team that there may be free pizza in if they want to put in a little extra work.
Yes.
Hint, Odyssey uniforms. Hint, hint.
And I'm going to Star Trek Las Vegas, so I will buy the whole team. Anybody who comes, things. I will buy them things to get stuff in the Foundry. Not a lot of things because I'm poor, but anyway, why don't we move along to what we've all been working on? So I'm just going to start because I haven't been working on anything because essentially I'm waiting for these to drop and figuring out what I'm going to do with them. So anybody else actually been getting in some Foundry work?
Actually, I've been getting in a lot of Foundry work. Thankfully, my project is at the end of the stage of map design and more in the stage of setting up triggers and whatnot. And so I've been setting up all the trigger work necessary for the big boss fight at the end of map 8, the one that has basically 2 possible scenarios. And just kind of the tricky stuff of getting both of those scenarios to play off, oftentimes kind of relying off of the same triggers. So what I've kind of done is I have 2 sets of objects triggered based off of 2 objects. One of them is a shared object, which kind of is the initiator, which starts everything. The other is earlier on, and that is unique to each scenario. So the way it kind of works is that you, for both scenarios, one of the triggers will be triggered off, the final one that's supposed to start everything, but only the other one will actually get both of its triggers fired. As kind of just a way to have them both sharing the same final trigger, but then just using an earlier trigger to kind of separate the 2 scenarios. And either way, it's kind of tricky, and hopefully it'll come out really well.
That sounds very tricky.
It works.
You're going to have to test that a lot.
Well, it's all using the power of and, because the scenario for the or the triggers for the unused scenario doesn't fire for both of its targets. They'll never actually fire. I don't know. I'm probably explaining it rather horribly.
I think I kind of get what you're saying. You're saying that if the player does 2 things, another thing will happen. If they don't do either of those 2 things, nothing will happen.
They don't do both of those things. So
Yeah.
they'll always do one of the things. They just won't do the other thing if it's not the path of the
okay, I got you.
the correct scenario. I know it's one of those things that I'm sure authors don't think a lot about, the fact that triggers, and when you have multiple objects on a trigger, it could, whether it's and or, because I mean, reach markers are or. You only have to hit one of them to fire it off, but component complete is an and. So both objects under a component complete have to be interacted with in order for it to fire off. And it's just a lot of trying to make sure the player is in the right position and where everything, because I mean a lot of pyrotechnics happen, and a lot of tricky stuff with people beaming out and doors getting blown all at the same time. And I need to make sure that the player is looking in the right direction when it happens. Otherwise, it kind of gets lost.
That can definitely be a challenge. I ran into one of those on my challenge mission, that I needed the player to be looking in a specific direction so they would see all the cool triggers that I let off. So I actually put in the interact to set off those triggers. The button actually says turn to look at the planet.
Actually use a reach marker tied, or while they're running down the hallway, tied to a map dialog. So when the map dialog completes, then it's set off.
Well, how do you think you're doing on part 2? If you had to guess.
I think I am almost through map 8. Once I get through this battle, it's literally a short walk to the end of the map. And I've almost got this battle completely rigged up. I'll need to do some testing to make sure it works, and there's a little bit of dialogue I've got to add here and there, but from a functionality standpoint, map 2 is just about done. And then after that, it's just 3 more maps, all much smaller, and technically already built. It's just getting the flow set up properly and all the battles rigged properly. So once I'm kind of just in this mode where I just want to push forward, not worry too much about the polish at this point, and then get it to a functionally done state. Because then at that point I can start like bringing in people to test.
Yeah. Seems like a good place to be at. All right. Anybody else getting much work done in the Foundry?
I have.
Well, not
Go, Mark.
I've done. Oh, never mind. You go first.
Okay. Well, besides the wonderful map we're sitting in, I've also I've been working on my. I decided to take a break from Sands of Gornar. I'm working on my President Okeg Has Gone Crazy mission, which is kind of half a follow-up to Purity and half a follow-up to Surface Tension. And I was literally inspired, and I'm posting it into the chat room now, by a scene in Scary Movie 3 where Leslie Nielsen as the president goes completely insane thinking aliens have taken over a busload of crippled kids and couldn't take human form properly and starts beating the crap out of them and blows his way out of the White House. And I spent like a week making a big conference hall in the middle of Paris and trying to work all these triggers where you have to chase Okeg across this beautiful walkway into his presidential shuttle.
That sounds quite crazy. I think that's the point, though.
I like it.
It's totally the point. The logic behind it was that between what happened on Megara and what happened at Surface Tension, Okeg pretty much thinks everyone's out to get him.
Poor
They
OK.
are.
I think everybody is.
You pretty much turned into the O'Brien of Star Trek Online.
Smiley O'Brien.
No, because I mean the old joke was that O'Brien, like everything bad that happened on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, happened to O'Brien.
Let's be grateful that hasn't happened to Kirayoshi.
Well,
Good, there could be a Foundry
one
mission.
thing that one thing that I remember in particular is that the O'Brien that we ended up with at the end of DS9 was actually an O'Brien from an alternate timeline because the one from the main timeline ended up dying of radiation poisoning.
Yep.
He was only 3 hours different. It's okay.
Yeah, and you remember the Ensign Kim that we had for like 5 seasons of the show was the one from a slightly alternate reality.
Yeah, but it was only an reality that was divergent for a couple hours.
Well, it wasn't
Yeah.
from an alternate reality or it was like it's more like a transporter clone than a alternate reality or alternate timeline because it was created by that subspace bifurcation thing.
Yep.
I hate
It's more
temporal
alternate
mechanics.
space than alternate time.
Just repeat, it's Janeway's fault.
Yeah, it's always been out.
Hail Janeway.
Hail Janeway.
Fail.
No, I like Voyager.
All right, Mark. You said you've been working on the Foundry.
Well, not a lot. Well, what I decided to do is I was going to go through my mission Bavat's Legacy Part 2, and I've actually done a significant amount of work on some of the maps already, but what I was going to do is do roughed out versions of all of the maps I was going to use so that I can start putting the story together and then, fill in the details of the maps later. Because for one of the maps, I decided that what I wanted to do is I wanted to make the player slog through a maze in the Gates of Breath or Pink Gook, which, actually turned out pretty nicely. It's just it's going to be extremely time consuming. So I just put down like part of the map and I'm going to finish it later.
Yeah, I definitely don't do all of my custom builds in one sitting. That would be very difficult.
Well, that's part of what bogged down my work on Bavette's Legacy Part 2 is that I did this one map where it's actually, it came out really, really nice, but it took hours and hours. What it is I took one of those props or one of the interior maps from the Klingon episode where you are. It's not the one where you actually go to Grethor. It's the one from when you're on your way to Grethor, where you go into this place where there's like a lava floor and stuff. And then after you do that map, then you get to actually go to Grethor.
Yeah, it's like
but
the
anyways,
gates of Grethor or something like that, right?
I think he
Well,
means the
it's not the
volcano.
Yeah, he's talking about
this one.
where you have to go to
Well,
meditate
this
in order
one
to get
you-
into Grethor.
I think so, maybe. Well, what is it? You crawl through a bunch of tunnels, and the ones on the bottom have this, glowing lava thingy. Well, for my use of this map, I decided that lava wasn't exactly what I wanted it to look like. Although the rest of the map was, exactly what I wanted. So what I decided to do was, I took stone slabs and figured out the exact right height so that they would be above the lava but not above anything else that was part of the floor. I don't even remember how many times I had to reload the map to see if I'd gotten the height right.
Life of
But,
Foundry author.
Yeah.
Eventually I got it, and it looks cool.
People always say
But yeah,
that
that's
they're just.
just one example of something that's slowed down progress, and
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to end up doing more of that stuff later. But at least I'll make a beta version of the mission before I get anything really complicated like that.
People
There
always
is
say
no-
that it'll go so much faster when we get the 3D editor. When I've used that 3D editor, it's taken just as much time because, you're looking at it from your character's perspective. So you can only see like one side at a time. So you adjust it one way, you look around the other way, and it's off. And then you adjust that, and then the other side is off again. So, I think it'll take just as much time.
Well, this is part of why people want to have a nudger, so that you could, select an object while you're actually, in the map with the map loaded, and
That's what I'm talking
and then, move the object slightly.
Because I played with that one in Neverwinter, and I played with a similar one in the EverQuest 2's housing system, where you essentially use your mouse as you're in game with your character to pick up an object and move it around in 3 dimensions. But it's the 3D perspective is so dependent on where you are and how you're looking at it. You would get it to line up looking at it one way, you walk around to the other side, and it's completely off.
And I can say this, because I've also used the Elder Scrolls. If you've ever used the Skyrim creation kit, because that's their whole dev tool when you're dealing with the 3D environment. The more in-depth like that I get, I have to say it actually gets harder.
Now, I certainly won't say it would be bad to have that. In fact, I'd love to have it, but I don't think it's going to make anything faster for me personally.
It's not going to make it faster for anyone, honestly. It takes just as much time, even when you have all that stuff, because then you start dealing with all the little stuff like, oh, now I got to deal with gravity. Oh, this isn't quite right. Oh, this isn't quite right. It takes just as much time.
Having a 3D nudger will not cure my obsessive compulsive map building.
It'll probably make it worse.
Probably.
It will, however, make certain things easier. It won't necessarily make the process easier overall, but there will at least be some things that would make it easier.
I would say probably it'll make the y-axis stuff easier. Because, of course, we can't see that on the 2D map. And we always have to test that. I think as long as you can just do the y-axis only, I think that will be much quicker.
As long as we can nudge the spawn points as well.
All right, let's see. Mark, you had a mission you wanted to talk about?
Yes, there was a mission by Rogue Enterprise. Crud. I don't remember what the name was off the top of my head, though. I guess I'll have to do a review on that one.
Was it his orders
It
or
was, yeah, I think it was that one.
his newest one?
What, do you have number 3 out already?
Well, no, he hadn't finished number 3. He's only up to number 2.
Okay. This is the
But
one
yeah,
that Hippiejohn and I did.
Oh, that's right.
What'd you think of it?
Ah, well. It was pretty good. There were a few things that he mentioned didn't work out quite the way he wanted them to when I went through it, but some of the parts of the mission were kind of one of those ironic twists, and I'm very interested to find out what Section 31 was actually up to on this planet, because so far their actions have been either they're trying to piss me off, or they're not being upfront about what they're doing to anyone except each other.
Now, this wasn't Section 31, it was Starfleet Makos, right?
Oh, right, yeah, that. But same thing.
Now, remember, I think after you guys reviewed this one in previous weeks, Rogue Enterprise had mentioned that this was sort of, I don't know, kind of a labor of love for him, you might say. It was something that he had in his head that he really wanted to make sort of for himself, which kind of explains a lot of the choices that he made. He was thinking of himself and where he wanted the story to go rather than thinking about the player necessarily, which is certainly a way to go. I mean, it means that you may have some players that go, "What? I would never do that."
Of course, but in anything where you have a morally questionable scenario will end up with that.
Oh yeah, probably. I don't know. How do you guys tend to make missions? Do you tend to make it for yourself and you say these are the choices that I would make, or do you think about the player and doing something more inclusive?
See, for me, I'm just going to use my series as an example. When I first created the first one on our Farasa, it was because I had a Frossen character, and I was like, there's no lore about them besides one rinky-dink little Doth mission. And I was like, you know what, I'll just write a story for myself because I want to know more about my own character's race's backstory. And so I did that, and it came out well. And then when everyone's like, do more, I was like, okay, I'll do a sequel. And my response was still, I want to write this about exploring these cultures, and that's what I enjoyed. And so it was for myself, but I took back in the feedback because I had already done part 1 and went, okay, well, here's what other people want. They want a little bit more combat and less in the dialogue. Okay, so I'll throw in a few extra mobs here that they get to kill. A few people are going, there was a little too much of the role playing. Okay, well, I'll back off a little bit, and they'll just have a couple of generic responses at times. So I think really when you start, it should be a labor of love. But if you're going to be doing something bigger and larger, you need to take in the feedback and adjust accordingly.
Yeah.
It's like sort of you can strike a balance between the two. I mean, the story sort of has to go where you need it to go. But I mean, you can throw in things for the player to make choices, even if it's just small dialogue choices.
Dialogue choices are an absolute must, I think.
I mean, we saw that in the reviews when we were doing Purity, when we went from Rellim's mission, which had many, many, many dialogue choices, to mine, which didn't have as much. It's not a strong suit of mine, I freely admit.
I even please.
Drogan, here's what I always say. If you can't come up with multiple dialogue choices with branching dialogue, have it go in the same path, but just have different buttons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no need to branch them all off in completely different directions.
Well, one thing I will sometimes do, and something that I like to see people do, is to have the dialogue so that it doesn't really branch. I guess you would say a different personality of captain in mind. So you're actually saying the same things and discussing the same things, and thus it leads to the same point logically, but it sounds different.
Using different tones of voice,
So
different word choices. Yeah.
So when I'm of writing dialogue, I tend to like go back and picture a scene like from TNG, and kind of use that as my baseline for writing dialogue. So if it's a tactical, it'll be played by Worf. If it's a science officer, it'll be played by Data, and if it's a engineer, it's Geordi. If it's the captain, it's Picard. Although usually I try to keep the captain's dialogue very simple.
And I go the extra mile to say I would also include, take into account a player's race, for instance. I actually have to say it's a little bit easier on the Fed side because most of the races act pretty similar unless you're a Vulcan. But you just kind of put in a little bit where it's saying the same thing, but the tone is different again, but it's specifically tailored to a race. Or if there's a reaction to something like the new series I'm coming at, the new single mission with OKEG, it's the difference between who voted for that guy and I can't believe I voted for that guy, and they both lead to the same place.
I actually encountered a mission that the guy wrote it, maybe it was a Fed mission, but the guy wrote it where a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the actions you take were maybe a little more belligerent than your average Starfleet officer. But I happened to be playing it with a Starfleet Klingon, and so it was absolutely perfect. But when I did the review, I was like, I would recommend you at least put in some dialogue options to soften it up a little bit. Because you're right, most Starfleet races are not going to act like that. But if you happen to be playing a Tellarite or a Federation Klingon, they might be a little more belligerent. But it's tough when, obviously, as we've said many, many times, when we can't know what the player is playing and what they feel about their character.
I would always point to my own stuff and just put a little tag before it. Square bracket, race name, end bracket.
So let's see, Dragoon, you had a discussion topic for us.
So yes, something interesting this week. I started watching another video podcast called Extra Credits, and the subject of this podcast is the video game industry and design and whatnot. But more specifically, what really me was they had they kind of do subjects all across the gaming in general, but they do often hit a lot on game design topics and the various aspects. In fact, I found this one playlist that they had kind of compiled of their episodes that all focused on video game narrative. And so much of the information that was covered in there just like completely hit home for me. I mean, like different subjects. For instance, there was one where they talked about pacing. And it's not just talking about the importance of pacing, but actually what good pacing looks like. How are techniques for getting good pacing? Stuff that I was kind of like unconsciously aware of, but never had really been able to like put into, this is what it looks like on a graph. So I kind of wanted to bring up the subject of would you guys want to improve how you as a Foundry author and designer of Foundry missions, where do you guys go to get more information, to find ways to improve yourself as a Foundry author?
Well, I just have to say, for myself personally, I go to the same place you just did, Extra Credits.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to include a link in the show notes, just because I really think, especially the narrative one, should be like required viewing for Foundry authors.
I would also say their Metroid Other M1 is too, because seeing how narrative goes wrong and can accidentally cause sexism is a very important one that needs to be covered.
Well, I mentioned it before, but I often, a place I go to sort of improve myself and to listen to how the experts and professionals do things is like behind the scenes stuff on movies and TV shows, especially commentaries by directors. Anything by like Ridley Scott, or the commentaries on Star Trek II is really good with Nicholas Meyer. You listen to how the professionals do it and how they approach things and how they look at things, and you can really learn a lot.
Well, one thing I watched a long time ago was a version of the first Resident Evil movie where you have Mia Jovovich and I think the director and one of the producers. Basically, there's like sitting down watching the movie and just discussing things about how the movie was made.
Yeah, one of the best ones I've seen is actually on the movie Serenity. On the Blu-ray, you actually get a little picture-in-picture of Joss Whedon and Adam Baldwin and a couple of the other cast members just sitting there on couches or something, watching the movie and doing their commentary. And it's great seeing the interaction between them and listening to them talk. And I'll never forget one of the things that Joss Whedon said on there is he said, every time I watch this movie, I think to myself, wow, you really like to hear yourself type, don't you? And he said, like, the original script was like huge compared to what is actually in the movie. And he just kept paring down and paring down and paring down. And that's probably important for us because, I mean, you don't necessarily put all the dialogue that you initially write in. I think you put a lot of it in, but there's no reason you necessarily have to. You only want in there what serves the story or serves the immersion. Like lots of put optional dialogue in, serves the immersion, serves the world building that we want to do. But you always want to be careful against sort of overwriting. And everybody's going to, every style of mission is going to have a different level where you're, at a certain point, you're writing too much. Some of us are going to reach that because of the type of mission that we're doing. Some of us are going to reach that at a different point than others. If you're doing a non-combat mission, obviously you're going to have a lot of text in there because how else are you going to do the mission? That's what it is. It's going to be lots of talking. It's going to be lots of, go here and do this instead of go here and kill that.
Would you believe there was actually an extra credits episode solely on exposition?
Oh yeah, exposition is a huge one. And watch any Joss Whedon commentary on any of his other shows, and he'll talk a lot about exposition and how he hates it, but he has to do it.
We all have to do it. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
only so much time to say it.
I mean, if you look at Serenity itself, I mean, so much in the first 20 or 30 minutes of the movie is exposition for people who did not watch the series Firefly, because you had to do that because you never know when you're going to the movie who's seen the TV show, and the Star Trek guys have to do that all the time.
Yeah.
I would actually say I think Trek has done exposition very poorly in my mind. I'm thinking specifically of one of the earlier TNG episodes, The Bonding, where Picard is literally wandering around the bridge asking about the mission they're on. That's an archaeology mission, and he apparently had no idea it was going on until about 5 seconds before someone got killed.
Well, TNG didn't really start off great.
Well, this was season 3 when it started to get good. But it's like, at that point, there should have been like maybe a little bit of someone, saying, hey, maybe the captain should actually know what the mission they're on is. And you know what? It isn't related to just early TNG. I saw this throughout. DS9 did it, Voyager did it, Enterprise did it, TOS is guilty of it, even the JJ films are guilty of it. There's always times when, there's this level of exposition and it's done, and for a moment you just go, wait, why don't you actually know this already? The as you know exposition is something that has to be avoided.
Where you're telling another character something they should already know, but actually what you're really doing is telling the audience this.
Yeah, I mean, SF Debris had an absolutely great way of showing how stupid it is by just pointing it down to just a blunt, a bland dialogue between two scientists. Well, as you know, Dr. Feldman, the quantum thingamajigger was created by Dr. You-know-who, and it's all thanks to Dr. Weldman. It just sounds so unnatural. If you're going to do exposition, write it as a conversation, just have the exposition as a bit of it.
So another thing that I often go to kind of improve my own Foundry authoring from a technical side is I will go and play other Foundry missions. I mean, I've got like probably quite a few tricks and whatnot that I've stolen from Rogue Enterprise missions.
Well, they always say that, one of the best techniques to get better at something is to...
Steal other people's work?
Well, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say experience other people's work in that medium. So, like, I'm a journalist in real life, so, what do I do to get better at my craft? I read other news stories, and steal from them. What did they say? Great writers borrow, or good writers borrow, great writers steal.
You're adapting technique.
It's always been the same.
No.
And we're all stealing from Rogue Enterprise.
Well, what is that great writers, you never notice when they appropriate things because it doesn't catch your attention.
They hide it. They hide it well.
Yeah.
Well, they make it their own and they run with it.
Mm-hmm. So, absolutely go to other Foundry missions and see how other people do things. But, even beyond that, go to other games, not even just STO, and see, how people are structuring their missions, their quest design, their stories. You might find something great in Defiance or the Old Republic or WildStar or, all those kinds of things. You might find something really cool and say, I think maybe I can do that in the Foundry.
I actually have a game I can actually recommend that fits very well with STO-style narrative, and that's, if you guys have ever played the 2002 classic GameCube game, Metroid Prime. I think one of the level artists actually works for Cryptic now on STO. So that's a good game, in my opinion, to kind of rip off and kind of put into this one, because it uses many of the same options that we have available as Foundry authors, and it's a similar style of gameplay.
A lot of the games, boil them down, are all, of course, the old cliche of kill 10 rats.
Yeah. Well, some of my level designs have been inspired by things I saw in the old AVP games, because, xenomorphs, one of the main gameplay features for when you can play as xenomorphs is that as a xenomorph, you would, hold down the control key and then you could walk straight up walls. So, they had very, all the levels in the games were thought out three-dimensionally. They didn't have, these giant cavernous... Okay, there were some things that had giant cavernous ceilings where you just couldn't, get up past a certain height, but most of them, were designed where, there's a balcony, there's some way you can, like, sneak up underneath the balcony and then, surprise whoever is standing on top of it, that sort of thing.
I'm a big fan of those games. Used to play them a lot back in college with the guys in my dorm. Used to have big old, PvP matches with Aliens vs. Predator. It was great. One of the games that I often go back to is Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight, which had some just brilliant level design and mission design. And that's something that I take a lot of inspiration from.
I was actually about to add, and I'm going to post a link into the chat room, a good game to kind of steal your map design from is Doom. And I don't know if you guys have seen this image floating around, the comparison of FPS map design from 1993 to 2010. And it shows the Doom map, and it looks like an actual building. But then you look at the FPS maps for current, and it's actually just a straight line.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, it's something that we can watch out as Foundry authors is to not make sure we don't make our maps too linear. Because I know we all have like a beginning and an end that we plan out, but the journey to the end can often be a great reward.
And it's definitely just as important. What's the old Voyager toast to the journey?
Considering that journey, I don't think that's a toast. I think that's a curse.
Well, I think what they were really trying to get at there was that not all of the journey was bad, just part of it.
Like any Trek, it got a lot better after once you got past the first couple seasons.
I mean, honestly, Voyager had a lot of episodes that really, really made me scratch my head and wonder what the heck was going on. But, not all of them were like that. They actually had a few that I thought were really, really cool.
Well,
like the one where Tuvok has to get some of the Maquis guys to quit being out of shape slackers and work like a proper Starfleet crew.
I still have to question why he had to turn up the gravity while they were holding heavy packs, though.
Rellimtime can tell
harder.
you. Rellimtime, of course, is a military man. He can tell you all about the difficulties of training.
I think the idea there was it's like running while carrying weight.
They were already carrying weight. Why turn up the gravity too?
Yes, but more weight.
Well, anyway, I think one of the dang it, I had a point here, and I've completely forgotten it. Oh, okay, yeah, okay. One of the things you can do to make your map seem less linear is to build portions that the player won't necessarily go to, but are there just for looks, like that. What we saw earlier with that Kirkvat built was a Jeffries tube behind a grate that you see it going off in the distance. You don't actually get to go there, but it's just another detail to make the map look bigger and seem like you're really in that space. It's like what Taco did with the ESD shuttle bay. You can't actually go there. It's there to make the station look bigger and look like a real station.
As someone who's actually done this before in my own missions, you have to be very careful about that. For instance, I would always say, doing stuff like that, don't put like a door like with the shuttle bay and having that overhang into the shuttle bay, because then everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, I can go in there," and then you hit the invisible wall. Ah, no. Maybe make it a window.
Well, when I built Beta Rana Station, I actually put in several things that were, like he said, just there for decoration. But one thing I did that I now somewhat regret, only somewhat, mind you, but is that I put in several objects that were, the best way I can think of to explain this, as they're doors, but you can't open the door. When you go over to the door, it works like some of the doors did in the old version of Assimilation, where you walk up to the door, you interact with the door, but the door doesn't open. You see this message telling you why the door won't open.
Yeah,
like
adding
in
doors
the case of Beta Rana Station, the station got damaged by a solar flare recently. So one of the doors, you walk up to it and it tells you that the environment behind the door isn't something that you could live in, and the door's sealed off because the environmental controls on the other side aren't working properly.
And I did some.
Well, when you look at the outside of the station, parts of it are like literally glowing hot. So I guess like the outer parts of the station, the environmental controls just completely failed in because it got too hot.
And I did
Anyway.
I did something similar on my Farasa map where there was a door. It was made from the holodeck arch with the door, and there's a Frost and Undergrowth thing inside going, sorry, this is the restricted area. Ambassador's offices are back here. You can't come back here. And then, on top of that, to make it feel better, I added the windows out to the city. You're up because you knew you were several floors up. You're like, you're not going to go out and into the city, but just enough to trick the player's mind to go, okay, there's more to this map than there is, what I see.
And adding closed doors is always something that I do on like Federation interior maps where if you have a long corridor, it can get very boring. So something I might do was, replace one of the walls with one of the wall and door assets that's closed. You can't get through. It just makes it seem like there's something else going off that direction. All right, moving along. So I have been having this feeling lately, the past few days, after this announcement of all these new assets, and I want to see if anybody else has this same feeling. Okay, I feel like every time we get an addition to the game, this happens especially in patch notes threads, and it happened a lot, I saw, with the announcement that there were new assets in many, many threads, even on Twitter, that it seemed like everything turned into requests for more. And it just seemed like everybody was like, there are new assets. Give me more, give me more, give me more. And it seemed like, I don't know, I felt like that was almost a little disrespectful. Like people weren't being appreciative of what they did get, which is fantastic stuff as we've explored tonight. And so I don't know, is anybody else feeling something like that, feeling something similar?
I kind of agree and I kind of disagree. I do agree that, we probably shouldn't be asking for more after getting all this really nice stuff. And Taco, if you're still in the chat room, seriously, man, thank you very much. This was wonderful. Thank you for taking time out of your day to do this. On the other side of the equation, I think there's a really, particularly since we're getting all these nice new toys, there were a few that, we're going, we could use a couple of the extra things just to make it all match the same quality level. We didn't get any new walls. We didn't get any windows. We got a lot of stuff that's, meant to be put on the surface, but we needed a couple more structural things. Otherwise, it can sometimes look like it's sticking out. But generally speaking, I think those are a very small number of things we need versus not being unappreciative. It's kind of like, hey, thank you very much for all of this. We just want to make sure that what we've gotten looks and matches up to the quality of the stuff we've gotten.
So I think one of the things to kind of remember, I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as like yes and no. First off, I mean, Tumor Boy is like one of the most extroverted devs we have, barring maybe Smirk or Trendy. So I mean,
well, Smirk and Trendy aren't devs; they're community managers.
True, but my point is that Tacofangs, I mean, he kind of knows what he's getting himself into. I mean, he spends a ton of time on the forum, so I mean, in a way, he's kind of used to it. And of the dev, he actually tends to have a pretty thick skin, so I wouldn't worry too much about offending him. I know where a lot of people are coming from. I mean, it's been quite a while since we've seen much attention, and so to have a dev suddenly paying attention to us, it's kind of a natural reaction. Is like to try and get their attention about what we see as various things we need. I mean, at the same token, yes, I mean, we should kind of take a bit of time to kind of appreciate that and even set up the expectation that we did just get stuff. I mean, this may or may... there's no sign that this will become a regular thing. So, I mean... Yeah,
but I mean, you don't want to be that kid on Christmas morning who opens the present and say, well, Mom, why didn't I get this other thing?
What? That's it?
Yeah. But I mean...
I absolutely see where you guys... and I'm also on that yes or no camp where, of course I want other things. Everybody's got their wish list and it's a mile and a half long. Mine is, for sure. But at the same time, I don't want to alienate the devs saying, well, okay, if we give them any one thing and we talk to them a little bit about this one thing, they're going to want 20 things, so I'm just not going to bother with it. I definitely don't want them to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to happen no matter what. I mean, it happens with everything, not just the Foundry.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's absolutely not just the Foundry. I mean, every patch note thread I've ever seen on this game forum just is like awash with talking about things that are not in those patch notes.
Well, you remember that thing that Tacofangs made that the one guy on the forum decided to put into his signature. I believe the phrase was, talking to players is like being a mall Santa.
Everybody tells you their wants without being able to deliver any of them. Or something like that. Yeah, I absolutely remember.
But yeah, I mean, Tacofangs is used to kind of filtering through the noise.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if there's really one thing I would love the devs to walk away from this with, it's the idea that the Foundry does not need bigger updates. It needs more well-focused updates. The stuff that Tacofangs give, especially those floors and waters, I mean, it's like, what, a total of, I don't know, maybe a dozen or so assets? I mean, stuff that he took a little bit of time to spit out and whatnot. And it's such a huge game changer for us. Because, I mean, they're well targeted. They were things that were highly requested. They were... Mm-hmm. And Tacofangs did a ton of... I mean, this is not the first time he's waded into the Foundry forums. I mean, he was around, kind of around offering feedback on when we were doing that one asset request thread, and that's where a lot of this came from.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know, add a couple costumes and maybe like one tiny feature, and you've got an entire Foundry update right there.
And it's not to say that people have been unappreciative. I mean, people have just like sort of an outpouring of affection for Taco. I mean, he's our new hero, pretty much. Yeah. So it's not to say
my new best friend.
I think in terms of new features for Foundry, in terms of, just like the way things make, or the functionary things, is the two that I would like to see most that, as far as I know, they have in the Neverwinter Foundry are, the ability to toggle object states instead of simply, having it be a one-way transition.
Does Neverwinter have that feature?
Two, the ability to, have the player interact with an object and then warp to another location on the map.
Yeah,
of course.
Because with Neverwinter, you can do things like interact with a door to open the door, then interact with the door again to close the door, and keep doing that until you get bored.
Yeah, but I think those are built into the objects.
Which is something that they might be able to build into some objects for us. But I think part of the issue is that one of the things that Taco said to me, or said to somebody, I can't remember if it was me, but I just saw him say this, is that each person on the team sort of understands their own little part of the Foundry. Taco's a design, Taco's a environmental artist. He understands how to put assets like the floors in. He doesn't know anything about how to put in a feature like, any of those little features that you were talking about. And we got to talk to the guys on the character art team if we want uniforms in. And we have this other people who we knew were working on features. We were told they were working on features, and then we were told that they weren't because of that, because of exploiters. So I mean, it's very piecemeal what we get in the Foundry.
Yeah,
because it's being done by completely disparate parts of the team.
Yeah, and I'm
gonna say this though, with regards to what you pointed out, Mark. The first one with the doors that open and close and stuff like that, that's also required for the basic game of Neverwinter versus STO, where we have automatic doors that open, whereas in Neverwinter you have to open a door manually. There's a different requirement for the content in that game versus what we get here. Now, as far as the teleporting objects that they have in the Foundry and Neverwinter, I would love to have that. There's no reason why we shouldn't have that. I get the feeling that they're going to end up using that for Iconian gateways at some point. So who knows, we might see that get ported back over. But again, it's something we've managed to work around, and we don't necessarily need it. You know, if I have to say
it'd be a lot neater having that than the workarounds, because I understand how to do the workaround, and I've learned its limitations, which, you know, are kind of...
That actually brings up another thing that's been talked about on the forums a lot this past week is workarounds. And we were showing off all of the different creations of the community, and in that thread, Tacofangs piped up and said, if I did some of this stuff, I'd be fired. And of course, what he meant was, all of those assets piled on top of each other, where of course he can just make a wall. We have to do all kinds of things to make a wall look like we want it to look, like a TOS wall, because we don't have one. And I posted in there that, there's a worry sometimes that when we think devs look at our workarounds and are impressed by our workarounds, we think that they're going to say, oh, well, they know a workaround, so we don't have to actually put this thing in for them.
I don't think that's the case, though. I mean, from what I saw of Taco's responses, was he was very impressed by it. And the case, he even made the point of, I tried using the Foundry, and I just couldn't do it because I'm so used to having the ability to create it. It's a difference of viewpoint. I'm going to say this. Part of the reason I always like to compare STO's Foundry to the Skyrim Creation Kit is the Creation Kit is the dev tools. And I'm going to tell you something. I've worked in it, and it can sometimes be even more of a bear than the Foundry, because now you have all this stuff. Great. Now we have to filter through it. Oh, crap. There's a difference in how you have to view things when you're seeing it from a different point of view.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've looked at and worked with some like third-party editors, like way back for Jedi Knight, I mentioned earlier, and those were way too complicated for a layman like me. And I mean, the Foundry is just as simple as I need it personally, and I don't want it to be more complicated. I don't want to have to make my own geometry. If it was in there, as an option, that'd be cool. I think there's too many problems with that to have it in there. What I was saying is, I think players ascribe this attitude to devs, that players think that when devs see something cool that we did as a workaround, that they're then going to not want to put the actual thing in there. Obviously, we can't really know what devs think when they compliment us on something.
No, but I think we can pretty confident that players are notorious for assigning all sorts of motivations to devs, which in all likelihood are not true.
Oh, absolutely.
I have to say, Drogon, I have to agree with Dragoon on this. I think that what you're saying right now is assigning one to Taco, because I don't think our lack of getting assets has been about them not caring or thinking, oh, they can work around it. I think it's a matter of, I don't have time to do it. I work, on an average work day, they're working, 8-hour shifts, and when they're coming up on crunch time, they're maybe working 20-hour shifts, and at the end of it, they're going, hey, I've done my work. I want to go home and sleep or have dinner or go spend time with my girlfriend.
And
They don't have my family.
Oh, absolutely.
And of course, they're heading into expansion 2 now, so
yeah,
all the more higher.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm just sort of relaying what I've heard other players say. And I have seen so many times where people ascribe motivations to the devs that they have no way of knowing and are probably not true. And especially when they take sort of action one way or inaction as action, where they say, oh, you haven't added anything to PvP, therefore you must hate PvP.
I always bring it back to the scientific method. Lack of proof does not confirm or deny it. It simply says there is no proof supporting that.
Absolutely.
So
I've seen things on the forums often enough that people will literally gripe on the forums about giving free stuff and try to ascribe some sort of sinister motive for giving people extra inventory space.
Not everything is a conspiracy.
So, yeah.
However, some things are conspiracies.
Something I've kind of noticed in the devs is that they don't like to really devote resources to something if they don't think they can really do it right or the way they want to. And I sometimes kind of worry that they look at the Foundry and say, well, we really want to do all these things, but we can't do those things right now, so we're going to have to punt it down further.
Mm-hmm. And so therefore, and so then they don't do anything, and we feel left out.
Definitely with what Tumor Boy did, and kind of what I would love to pass on to the dev team is that we don't need big stuff, we need targeted stuff.
Absolutely.
Little things can have a huge impact.
I mean, I've heard people refer to the new floors as something that will revolutionize our map building.
Oh yeah, it's going to bring out a lot of possibilities to new map designs and stuff.
I concur, and that's really what we need, you know? Particularly, I mean, the things that I see in this update that are really going to be the game changers are the floors, the water, and the pads, because we can use those anywhere for any reason. And those are the things we need to request, you know? The next thing I personally want to add to the list is I want to say, okay, I would like to get the Origin interiors, then I can actually have a nice kind of matching Fed interior. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I would say, let's do we need Romulan interior stuff because we don't have any of it. And then after that, let's finish off the cleanup.
None of the new Romulan Republic interior assets is available in the Foundry. Not a single one of them.
Well,
also, there are a bunch of new Klingon assets that got introduced in Legacy of Romulus that would be nice to have, such as you remember that mission where you got to choose an ally? There are those Klingon doors that have those glowing lights in the middle to let you know whether or not they're locked or whether they open when you... Those are awesome.
You realize we're doing it right now.
Yes, we are.
The slightest provocation, we come up with massive lists of all these things.
Mm-hmm. And even I'm thinking of one. I mean, I look at one of the big things from this update that I'm taking away is it's a brand new set of style of consoles that we haven't had before. These new ESD ones, they're Starfleet, of course, but they're very, very different from all the ones that we had before, and that's very cool. And I love new consoles. And
that reminds me of another thing that I've had on my want list for a long time. I've had this on my want list for the Foundry since yesterday's Enterprise, or whatever that featured episode was.
Temporal Ambassador.
That one. Tholian console.
Mm-hmm. Just adding a new set of consoles to the game, especially for different species that we haven't had before. Like one of the ones on my want list is Riemann consoles.
Those are another one.
You can get them all. You can get them all off of the set for the Fleet Mine. The Fleet Mine has every Riemann asset you would possibly want.
And can I just say this?
The Scimitar Bridge is all decked out in Riemann stuff.
Also good.
Oh yeah.
Also good source for that.
Here it is, though. I think what we need to do, though, is instead of saying, I want this asset, I want this asset, I think we need to start saying, instead, we want this set of assets. You know, let's not say, I want the Riemann consoles. No, let's say, I would like to have a set of Riemann assets that can allow me to create a Riemann environment.
And we do know that, I think it was said a long time ago by maybe Zero or maybe Taco that how they add assets is they add them in groups.
Yeah, it's easier for them to do a group of assets than it is a...
Mm-hmm.
I know, I mean...
And that's what we need to request. We don't need to be requesting, oh, I want, this transporter from this specific app. No, we need to be saying, we would like to get this group of assets because it will benefit us in this manner. And just ask for the groups because they can just go in there and do the quick mark of go, oh, here's all the assets from this group. Click, 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 click.
Mm-hmm.
Transfer over. It game changes us. It's easier on them. It's easier on us. And we're not doing this whole, we want this asset. We want this asset. No, let's be a little more broad and let them pick from this list of assets.
I was thinking it would be really cool if they were to tie dev time to like adding assets to the Foundry challenges. So whatever group of assets gets added in ties to whatever the upcoming Foundry challenges.
Mm-hmm. And they've done that before a little bit. I mean, right after they put the Tholian combat mobs in was when we had the Tholian challenge.
I think it was mostly Brandon taking advantage of it, but
yeah. I mean, it was it wasn't coordinated between the two, other than Brandon saying, "Oh, hey, those are in. I'll do I'll do the challenge for that."
Well, but Brandon took the strike while the iron is hot approach. That basically, something presented an opportunity and he jumped on it.
Absolutely.
So maybe this is something we should be working on with Smirk, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, hey, you know what? Let's discuss, maybe a couple months out, talking about what, maybe the next challenges when one's going on. And, we arranged it with them ahead of time. And they go, okay, fine, we'll go talk to the devs. We'll go put in the assets for you. And it doesn't have to be every challenge. I think that would be really unfair to the devs. Say
sure.
Maybe once a quarter of the year, we get an asset update and we focus our next challenge on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how long does a full challenge cycle go?
I think it's about 2 a quarter when we don't have a major update like this time.
Yeah, because I mean...
Yeah, this one is a bad one to judge by.
Yeah, isn't it like 6 weeks of work plus 3 weeks of voting? Something like that?
I don't think it's maybe 6 weeks of work, is it? I can't remember.
I think
it's 4 to 6 weeks. It's varied at times.
So yeah, I mean, even if they were to do one for every Foundry challenge, and I'm not saying they had to, it would still be like every 2 months.
Yeah, and it would require a bit of prep work, of course, because you would need those assets out right when you start the thing. Right
I don't know.
When you start the
The big thing that it would require, though, is it would require some kind of a plan.
Yes.
Right now, I mean, with the Foundry kind of being the afterthought, we've got a number of very noble devs taking a little bit of extra time to put assets into the Foundry or work on fixes or stuff like that. But there isn't any sort of leadership from above saying, let's, even if it's not big, let's
that we know of.
So I mean,
absence of proof is not proof, as we say. So there is doesn't seem to be any leadership that we can see.
True. But I mean, I would just like them to kind of coordinate things.
Which is why I said let's talk to Smirk. If we can find a way to coordinate between the community manager, and the devs, I think this would be a lot less of the chaos we've had of, oh my god, we got something. Oh my god, we've gone so long without something. Let's just try to work out an arrangement where we can say, hey, let's talk about a Foundry challenge. For this challenge, we're going to need this set of assets. We may not have them all. Would you be willing to go in and look and say, okay, we're going to be doing this challenge. It's a promotional thing. Mm-hmm. We'll dedicate we'll ask the devs, give us an hour of one day to put in a group of assets every couple of months. That's it. And we'll be very specific and concise about it.
Yeah.
And we have to work as a community. We have to work at this. We have to work very closely with Cryptic on this. We have to coordinate.
Yeah, I mean,
so essentially, like, going to Captain Smirk and saying, just as an example, we think a challenge involving the Remans would be very cool. Can you get with Taco and whoever else needs to be gotten with, and get us the assets from the Scimitar Bridge map, the consoles and the walls, and the big Thaleron thing, and can you get with Joe Jing and add in the Riemann Nemesis uniforms, something like that, and say, can we try and coordinate this so that maybe these get in. It's a little update. It's great for everybody. Everybody can use these updates, and it coincides with the challenge to sort of promote this, that, we're adding cool new stuff to the Foundry. Here's a challenge to promote it, and, coordinate that so those are in right at the start of the challenge.
Yeah, it's all about getting
it benefits them because it gets it out there that they're working on the Foundry and adding stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
if they were to do this.
Yeah, it's more bang for less developer buck, or I should say, only minor developer buck, at least as far as we can tell. I mean, even then, they're not even having to worry about getting new features. It's just minor updates, kind of keep everyone's appetite whetted.
As I've always said, the Foundry does not need more features. It just needs a few more assets.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but even in features, just prioritizing, looking through what features you could get in, how much would they benefit things, and how much can we do on with limited amounts of dev time. Because not all features are equal.
Primer in the chat room is asking, Smirkworks at PWE, can you do this? And I was saying, I'm sure that the PWE guys communicate back and forth a lot.
Oh, and in fact, one of his primary responsibilities is passing along feedback from the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously it's not a situation where he would I command you to do this. It'd be like he would go to them and say, this is a cool idea, let's do this.
Yeah.
And don't forget to say please.
Please. Politeness costs you nothing and gets you everything. That's what I always say. It's probably completely untrue.
Not at all. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more rude people. That said, sometimes on the internet, you wonder.
You wonder. You absolutely do. Well, guys, we're running up against our time limit, so we will throw up our contact info and call it a night.
And you'll notice that this week we've got Markhawkman on the list, who needs to start checking his Twitter. So, if you want to email us, you can contact us at foundryroundtable@live.com. You can contact the podcast directly at Foundry Roundtable on Twitter. You can contact Drogan at Drogan1701. You can contact Hippiejohn at Hippie_JOHN. You can contact Markhawkman at MAR Hawkman. That's no K in there. And you can contact me at Greendragoon, 2 O's.
And I think, as a final thought, one of the things that we can do to kind of help things along maybe is to just continue showing Cryptic how much we appreciate anything being added to the Foundry. And just be appreciative. Yeah. Be thankful for Tacofangs, because I have a sneaking suspicion that maybe he kind of just did this on his own.
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest compliments to a dev is watching people use and enjoy what you've created. They're a lot like Foundry authors.
And so I'll tell you this, everybody, when you start, these things are in tomorrow, so when you start using the assets, post screenshots of everything you're building with it.
There's already a thread going, kind of showing off some of the stuff.
Mm-hmm. So when you start adding it to your existing maps or building new maps with the new stuff, show it off. Someplace where Taco can see it. So he'll be encouraged to do that.
Oh, he's around in the ether.
He's around. He's always around.
I'm sending it to his Twitter.
All right, guys. Well, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Sayonara.
Good night, everybody.